Hello, 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 hello. All right, I'm going to start you guys off with a parable, a story, an anecdote, if you will. Imagine you had a very close friend, your best friend, right? You grew up together, you've known her or him from childhood. And you trust that friend emphatically and wholeheartedly. And yet, every time you try to do something with your life, every time you try to take a step forward, every time you try to set off on a new venture, this friend sabotages you. This friend tells you, I don't think that's a good idea. Or they say, well, what will other people think? Or they say, people will laugh at you. Or they say, are you sure that's what you want to do with your life? They introduce doubt, fear, and lack of trust of your own self into your mind. Now, of course, this is your best friend. You've known them from childhood. You can't just end your friendship, right? They've been with you, through thick and thin. But literally every decision that you make and you run it by this friend is met with criticism, negativity, and just wears you down, makes you second guess yourself. How long would you continue that friendship? Now, I tell you this analogy, and I'm sure as you're listening, you probably have friends like this, or hopefully had friends like this, had been in the past tense, that you recognize that this is probably not somebody that you should be friends with, and maybe cut off that friendship and moved on. But for a lot of us, we have kind of learned and grown to accept that level of negativity from people, regardless of who it's coming from. And we internalize that, right? Or we, listen to that. Now, I want to take it a step further and say, what if that friend literally not only gave you, bad advice or criticized you or just made you fearful of every new decision you wanted to make? What if that friend actually went out of their way to sabotage you? I'll say that again. What if, in addition to the negativity that this friend spewed at every attempt that you made to change your life in some way, shape, or form, they also did things to sabotage you? Like, let's say you decide tomorrow, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go for a run 7 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as you wake up, you look at your phone and that friend says, stay in bed. Just sleep for a couple more hours. It'll be fine. But you trust this friend, right? This is your best friend. You've been through thick and thin with this friend. And even though you're trying to improve your life, even though you're trying to do something better, you listen, you hit snooze, put your phone down and go back to sleep. Is that a good friend? Is that somebody that you should be listening to? Now, of course, on surface level, any situation and any scenario in which this is presented to you, your answer is going to be hell no. Like, no, this is not a friend who is excessively critical, a friend who sabotages you, a friend who does not encourage you, a friend who at any point in life you try to improve yourself, this friend is trying to bring you down, is no friend at all. Now you're probably wondering, okay, where am I getting? I'm here. That friend is you. I'll say that again. That friend is you. And I don't mean that you are that friend to other people. I mean that you are the shitty friend to your own self. That voice in your head, every time you're overthinking, that's that friend. That's that voice that has been with you. That's your friend, right? I put friend in quotes. You trust that friend. Even though every time you try something new, you go, okay, I'm gonna try to meditate. And close your eyes. And there's that voice that's your quote friend. That's you saying, oh, don't you have to check something? Don't you have an email you have to check? Don't you have what are you going to do tomorrow? What are your plans? Like, you want to meditate, but there's this voice, this other you that doesn't want you to. Because you've grown with that voice, because you've grown with this understanding that that is you, quote, you essentially listen, but eventually it becomes a battle. There are no adversaries in this world beyond the self. I'm going to say it 3 times. There are no adversaries in this world beyond your own self. There are no adversaries in this world aside from yourself. It's been said in different ways, I am my own worst enemy, right? We are self-involved. We self-sabotage. However you want to phrase it, I get in my own way. At the end of the day, it's a message from one aspect of yourself trying to tell your conscious self that there's another aspect of yourself that is determined, for whatever reason, to be the adversary to you. Self-criticism, self-judgment. What will other people say? That voice that says that, what will people think? In your head. That's the only thing stopping you from getting up and going to the gym. Think about it. You decide we're in February, right? You decide at the beginning of January, I'm going to start working out. You probably told your loved ones or your friends or whatever, like, this is your New Year's resolution. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Then you wake up. Your mother isn't telling you don't work out. Your father isn't telling you don't work out. Your spouse isn't telling you don't work out. Your best friends aren't going to say don't work out. It's you. It is you telling you don't work out. It is you telling you take another shot. It is you telling you eat that extra chip. Eat those snacks. Eat that candy. Yes, this is bad for your health. Yes, this will rot your teeth. You know that. There's one aspect of the self that knows this. Then there's another aspect of the self that doesn't give a fuck. The battle is not external. That is the illusion. The battle is internal. And it is with you. In a previous episode, I spoke about how I had a dream once where I actually saw myself, a doppelganger. And I mentioned how movies that portray the main character's, arch nemesis or arch nemesis as the main character, as a reflection of the main character, terrify me on a subliminal level. Seeing your own self facing you, to me personally, and I'm sure if I conducted some sort of survey, people, if I asked them, how would you feel if you were walking down the street and you turn a corner and you were faced with yourself? You would literally feel your skin crawl, goosebumps and all of that. That's the frightening thing, because no one knows you like you. And more importantly, you recognize on some level how powerful you are at defeating your own self. I'm going to say that again. You recognize on some level how much power you have defeating yourself. Any person that has struggled with addiction, any person that has struggled with depression, any person that has struggled with some sort of mental health issue, it's you versus your own self. I struggle with depression, so I'm speaking for myself in that regard. Clinical depression, where you just wake up in the morning and you just feel it. for no reason. It's just there. And there were times my whole life when I would feel that hit. It doesn't even have to be first thing in the morning. It could be everything's going great, and then boom. It's like somebody pulled the rug out from over you. And you feel it. And what I used to do is the feeling would come first, like a pain. It's an emotional pain. But it's pain, some sort of level of pain. And you would feel it, but it would come from nowhere, seemingly. And what I would do is I would try to figure out what is the cause of this feeling, right? Because that's what the brain does. If you have something that you're experiencing, if I woke up, I had a crick in my neck, right? And I have a pain in my neck, I would feel the pain and go, okay, what caused that, right? And I would seek out, okay, did I sleep funny? Am I sleeping on my side? I shouldn't do that. You would seek out solutions to the problem that you're experiencing so that you do not re-experience the pain again, right? It's you're theoretically, you're set up to avoid, right? To seek out the problem and come up with a solution to the problem so that you can avoid the pain. It's pain avoidance, right? That's how the brain works, right? If I put my hand on fire, I'm going to get burned. I'm not going to do that again. I feel the pain of the burn. That pain was caused. What caused the pain? Oh, it was a fire. Okay, let me not put my hand on fire again. That's how the brain learns. When you wake up in an emotional pain, like depression, what you do is try to go, okay, what's causing this? So then you scroll through your mind. Is it my partner? Is it my job? Is it where I live? Is it my friends? Is it my family? Am I feeling fulfilled? What is it that I'm doing? How do I keep myself from feeling this way again? But a lot of the times, especially with chemical depression, it's not external, it's internal. It is not external, it is internal, it's the brain, right? There's a chemical issue there where, something has dropped, serotonin, dopamine, whatever, right, has been depleted. That is the cause. That is the cause. But then how do you prevent that when it's something that's chemical? Right? And that's the purpose of this episode, or one of the purposes of this episode. We're going to go in a bunch of different directions. But for me, meditation has helped me deal with my depression. When I would feel that way before, I would seek out external reasons for the pain that I was feeling. And then I would go about trying to solve the problem so that I can prevent, or what I perceived as the problem, so I can prevent feeling the pain again. And it caused me additional suffering because it's such a painful feeling that you almost get to the point where you're desperately seeking out, what do I need to do to eradicate this feeling? Do I need to get a divorce? Is it my relationship? Do I need to go to a therapist? It's all over the place seeking for an answer, but those aren't these people, right? The external, they're not the fault, it's internal. What meditation has helped me realize and learn is that when I wake up in the morning now and I feel the depression, I can look at that and go, okay, I am me. And then here is my physical self, right? You're not just one person. I've spoken about this in previous episodes. I've mentioned Gurdjieff, Uspensky, and man's many eyes. Okay, so there's more than, it's not just you. Even neurologists say that there are two personalities. One is relatively mute, and then the other one is a dominant personality that you sort of, encounter on your daily basis. This is a direct quote from a book by Michio Kaku. It says, we are traveling with a mute prisoner with its own personality and set of beliefs and ambitions. You could have a brain where two of the brain's hemisphere, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, might have opposing beliefs, right? That is from the book Future of the Mind, I believe. That's on a neurological level. And then you have the Buddhists to talk about there's, the many selves. And then you have, the thinkers like Uspensky and Gurdjieff who talk about man is composed of many eyes, right? So I'm saying you have who you think you are, then you have other aspects of yourself. You have the higher self, you have the lower self, you have the physical form self, right? The body. And it has its own desires and needs and things of that nature. There's many eyes. You have many eyes, okay? Now, what meditation has taught me is that I can have two opposing desires occurring within the same body. And what meditation does is teaches me to watch the conflict. Because if you're in the situation, like I started this podcast with the analogy, imagine you have a friend that was self-sabotaging. You didn't even realize it because that's your friend, right? Now, imagine that friend is actually yourself. Now, when you go 35 years, your whole life, my whole life, thinking I was just one entity, right? When I would have these feelings of depression, it was just, okay, I'm feeling depressed now. I am depressed. And so I become depressed because I was just the body. I was never made aware that there was more than one entity operating in this form until I started reading about neurology, until I started studying psychology, until I started studying, spirituality, and all of these things all point to the same thing. What I'm expressing to you right now, a person has many selves. So when you meditate, so every time I talk to people about meditating, they say, I can't meditate because I cannot clear my mind. My response to them is, it is not about clearing your mind. It is about watching your mind. You see, before you start meditating, that battle that you experience when you sit to meditate and you go, I just want to focus on my breathing, and then this voice starts doing its own thing, that battle used to go on in the background of your mind. It goes on in the background of your mind every single day. But you don't realize it's a battle. You're not conscious of it, right? So it drives you, it controls you. And what meditation does is it makes you conscious, right? That, okay, there is a battle happening here, and it's me versus myself. And you become the observer, right? And you pull back and go, oh shit, like, this isn't, if I want to meditate, right, then who is this asshole telling me that I need to think about these things? Right? Okay, well, that's also me. Okay, well, now all of a sudden you start to look and go, wow, this, what I thought was just a single focused desire that I had, which was, okay, I want to meditate. I want to focus on this thing. It's not that simple. It's like watching that friend and realizing, hey, this person is not necessarily looking out for your best interests. Right? Meditation, the act of meditation makes you aware of self. It makes you self-aware. The exercise, the practice of meditation, especially if it's done consciously, can become a meditation of a practice of self-awareness, which is basically how one becomes conscious, how one awakens. Hear what I'm saying? Okay, so now you sit to meditate. You say, I want to focus on my mantra. My mantra is Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I just saved you $2,000 on a TDM, a Transcendental Meditation Training course. It's one of my favorite songs by George Harrison, but it's also a mantra that you can use. So you sit. This is typically how a meditation session, particularly when you begin, goes. Okay, I sit down, I close my eyes. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Did you check your TikTok yet? And then I go, okay, but that's not what we're doing right now. We are meditating, okay? And this is all happening in the mind. But the key is I'm now observing what is happening, right? So now your focus is being trained. You're watching. You're the watcher. It's like if I told you your best friend is actually sabotaging you, you wouldn't believe it unless I taught you to see it yourself. And that's what meditation does. It teaches you to see what yourself is doing. It makes you aware. It makes you conscious. That is the key to free will. So if I sit down and I go, we're going to meditate. Okay? And I go, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Did you check your email? That's not what we're doing. I see that. Back to meditating. So that's how you start to wrest control of yourself from yourself. You have to really understand that there is more than one entity comprised within every, quote, individual. We have different systems, right? So before, doctors used to think, okay, if you had a mental health issue, they would give you a medication to deal with, the brain, right? There's an imbalance in the brain. But now, nutritionists are coming in and saying, well, yes, you could have a chemical imbalance in your brain, but you could also have a gut issue. So if your gut, is imbalanced, that could cause mental health problems. And then you go, wait, what? Right? So you have all of these systems operating together, comprising to make one entity. There is no such thing as a unilateral as an individual. That's just not how this works. You can see it in a corporation. Some people like to think, okay, Amazon is comprised of Jeff Bezos. But people forget that Amazon was founded by Jeff Bezos and his wife, and his parents, and his friends, and the first workers, the first employees. It's not like the dude just cloned himself a million times, right? So each individual, if I call Amazon right now, I'm going to get one individual that's going to tell me one thing, right? And I could talk on the phone like, well, you guys did this, right? Call the customer service department. I did this yesterday. Okay, well, I have a problem with what you guys did, because she didn't do shit. She's in one whole department. She was minding my own business when I called her with an attitude, right? But she, in my mind, is Amazon. And as a representative of Amazon, she also internalizes her role while she's on the clock and then defends the company as though she is the entity Amazon. But I guarantee you, if Jeff Bezos was observing her actions on the phone call, one, she would probably behave in a different way, knowing that Jeff Bezos was observing her. Okay? So his conscious awareness of her actions, of her behavior, will alter her behavior and make her actually be a better employee. And two, Jeff Bezos, if he were the one to answer my phone call, would respond in a different way than she would, because he has more power than she does. Does this make sense? Okay, so when you are in a situation right now, which is like 99% of human beings, we're operating unconsciously. I've said this repeatedly throughout this podcast. This podcast has been going on for 3 years now? 4? something like that. And almost every other episode I mentioned that free will is an illusion for those who are living unconscious lives. And if you're living an unconscious life, you will be externally driven. It's like being a non-playable character, an NPC in a video game. You are not conscious, and you will live your whole life just reacting to external circumstances and being driven by unconscious desires and drives. You are not in control here until you start exercising your conscious free will. Okay? So think about meditation like Jeff Bezos watching a customer service representative, right? The change of behavior when the person who is supposed to be in charge of the entity turns its conscious awareness to the employee. Your body is an employee of you, right? Your body, your personality, your persona, your self. Think about the self. I like to think of it as a cell, like a prison cell. It's something that confines the body. It's something that confines your consciousness, right? It's a vehicle, okay? It has its own, nuts and bolts and its own behavior. And that voice in your head, it has adapted from what society demands, society's expectations, society's cultures, like, criticism, negativity, all of that. So the fact that it says these things and tells you cannot do these things and makes you go, well, what would other people think? That is society. That is the voice of society that has been uploaded into the persona, the personality of your body, of yourself, right? And if you don't make yourself conscious of it, it will drive you. So much so that when you wake up in bed and you go, it's time for me to get up, right? That's you giving a command. And then your body goes, hit the snooze button. And you hit the snooze button, even though you expressed a desire to wake up. You want to wake up. But your body is telling you do something differently. Who's in charge? Right? I could be Jeff Bezos and I could say, when customers call in, they are never wrong, right? And whatever they need, you make sure that before you get off the phone with them, their needs have been met, right? So I could start off and say, I can express that, okay? And then an employee of Amazon could be like, okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the job. And then a representative calls in and says, oh, okay, this happened. If they aren't being monitored, if the employee isn't being monitored and they know they're not being monitored or observed, that employee will not treat the customer the way it's been expressed that the customer needs to be treated. So that's what's happening when any of us wakes up with any kind of desire to do something. I got up today, time to meditate. Here go my body. No, let's go back to sleep. Okay, so I've been meditating for a while now. In the past, maybe a year ago, I would have had that thought and then I would have just gone back to sleep. Who's in charge? I woke up expressing I want to meditate, and the body is telling me, no, let's go back to sleep. Who's in charge? Am I in charge, or is the body in charge? Well, the body is an unconscious entity that's just sort of comprised of culture and society and societal's expectations of essentially average behavior, right? Society wants people to be average because it wants people to be controlled. It wants people to be civilized. It wants people to behave in a certain way. And part of how it keeps people controlled is to keep them unconscious. And part of how you keep people unconscious is to keep them unaware. And the way you keep people unaware is to keep them average. Unconscious. Driven by the body. Driven by the unconscious. Driven by societal standards. Programmed. Is this thing on? Look around. We're living in a world of average people. That's the definition of average. And the ones that we revere are the ones who somehow broke free of their programming for better or worse. For better or worse. Think about it. Look throughout history. We don't typically celebrate average people. They may have been of average, quote, IQ or intelligence or whatever, but something about their behavior made them stand aside from the rest of society, and that's why we look up at them with reverence, regardless of whatever behavior that they exhibit. So on some level, we know to respect that because we know that to get to that is to break free in a way. So on a subconscious level, right? There's a part of us, our consciousness that is aware, that looks at it as a person and goes, "You broke free from the programming." On some level, you broke out of the norm. On some level, you are deviating from programming. And so there's your conscious self that has been restrained, but still aware, right? Remember I said there's a mute prisoner that's watching? That's your consciousness. If you're living an unconscious life, it's mute. If you're living a life that's driven by your body, right? Your body tells you do this. Your body says, we're depressed today because the chemical levels are down. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm depressed. Your body says, we're not working out today. Go eat some chips. Okay, then you get up and eat the chips. Because why? Because it feels good to eat and not exercise and not be disciplined. Okay. But when we look at people who are super fit, they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go run, or they exercise at night and they're super fit and they eat a particular way. On some level, your consciousness recognizes that in that individual is a person who has broken some level of programming, and you respect that. We respect that. So on one level, we are programmed to essentially live unconscious lives, but on some other level, on a higher level, your higher self looks at individuals who broke away from programming and bucked the system, and you have to respect that. My job here in this episode is to make you conscious of what is happening right now. Because if you're not aware of the problem, you can't fix it. I go back to the friend analogy. If you think this person is your best friend, and yet they're doing things that are hurting you, you could live your whole life constantly controlled by an entity that you think wants best for you, but actually the actions say otherwise. And yet you have taken this entity as your own, as yourself. If you're not aware of what's happening, then you can't do anything to change it. So as crazy as this sounds, that is the nature of this podcast, this episode is to bring it to your awareness. Listen to yourself. There is you, and then there is yourself. There is a quote that says, I think, therefore I am. There is another quote that says, the I that says I think is not the same I that says I am. You see, if you are having thoughts and you can listen to those thoughts, then those thoughts are not you. There's two different things happening here. I'm going to say that again. There is the thought that's happening, right? I think. And then there is the I am that is observing the I think. Now, society wants you to think that you are the thinking mind. But throughout history, throughout time, those who hold the truth have tried to get humanity to realize that you are not the thinking mind, you are the being. Always have been, always will be. Everybody keeps saying, I want to meditate, but. Okay. You hear that even in that sentence, that is communicating a truth to you. When you listen to people talk, listen. Listen. Because there is this, I don't want to, what's the word? You can see that there is a dual battle, even with the sentences that people say. I want to work out, but it's hard. I want to eat better, but sometimes I get tempted. Tempted by what? You should be in charge of your own body. You can't control anything else in this world. You cannot control anything else in this world. You can't control other people. You can't control the news. You can't control politics. The only thing you have control over is yourself. And you barely have control over that because as it stands, the majority of people are ruled by the self, ruled by themselves, ruled by themselves. And what you don't understand is that if you are controlled by yourself, that self is a construct of society. It's a construct of biology. It's essentially like getting into a car that is programmed to take you to a particular destination. And that destination is fucking average. It's like a worker ant. You see them walking in the little lines, right? Drones. I love that. I've been watching a lot of Star Trek Voyager. And right now, the analogy of the Borg comes into mind. Every time I see that, of all the races that they interact with, on some level, the Borg race freaks me out. Like, I don't like that. And I think it's because the idea of just behaving, like a hive, there's a collective, there is an ideology, this is how you behave. Do not think outside the box. Do not behave in a way that, what ruffle any feathers. Just stay in line. We are the collective. Resistance is futile. Makes my skin crawl. But that's what the mind is. So every time, and this is a great analogy, if I do say so myself, whenever the Borg would assimilate a new race, they would take the person, right, the body, and they would incorporate their technology to get them all on the same wavelength and thinking the same way. So they became like hybrids of whatever race they were, half Klingon but half Borg. But the Borg, the technology controlled them, and they were no longer individuals, right? And if somebody tried to distinguish itself in any way, that was a sign to the collective that this individual was malfunctioning. And so the rest of the Borgs would, disassemble them, attack them, take them apart. And we do the same thing in society. Our society is the Borg. And the reason why on Star Trek, an individual who has been assimilated into the Borg would ever sort of show its individuality was because that was what it truly is before it was incorporated into the Borg. And that's why the collective viewed that expression of individuality as a problem, as a malfunction, because the function of the collective is to get everybody in line with the collective, its desires, its objectives, not the individuals. And we see that in society right now. Everybody's dressing the same way. Everybody's looking the same way. Everybody's thinking the same way. Everybody's talking about the same thing, doing the same thing. And every time you try to say, hey, how would I do something different? There's this voice in your head, and that is the voice of the Borg. That is the collective. That is society. And it says, no, be fucking average. I don't want to drink anymore. No, everybody drinks. I don't want to smoke anymore. No, everybody smokes. I don't want to be depressed anymore. No, everybody is depressed. Are you hearing me? My physical form, the body, myself, has a chemical imbalance that makes it predisposed to clinical depression. But I am not a depressed individual. The body is susceptible to certain things because of its balance, its construct, the way it's, my biology or my body's biology, but it's not me. With meditation, with medication, and I'm not here to give you medical advice. I am not a doctor. This is a personal anecdote, and I'm just telling you what has worked for me. My medication has been art. I paint every day. I create in one shape or form. I focus. If I'm not painting, I'm not in a good place. And it's beautiful because if my therapy if the result of my therapy is something tangible, a beautiful picture, can you imagine? To me, that's transmogrification. To take my pain, the physical chemical imbalances, and go, okay, I feel this way. Now I have to transform that. My body feels this way, so I will transform that into art. This is what I did with my pain. I made something beautiful. See, if I don't create, then where does that energy go? Right? So creative and destructive energy are the same thing. So I wake up with the destructive energy every day. If I don't do something with that energy, then I will destroy myself. So I take that and I channel it into my art. I don't channel it. I don't keep it internally, because then I will destroy myself. 2, mushrooms. That has worked for me. There has been a CNN expose special, I guess documentary is a better word. Yeah, let's go with that. On magic mushrooms. I suggest you look into it. This is not medical advice. 60 Minutes recently did a documentary or episode on it as well. I microdose. If it's a chemical issue and this natural plant, this natural fungi can restore a chemical imbalance, okay, right? To me, I look at it like, okay, here's my car. I've gone and turned on the vehicle. The vehicle is my body. And I look, and there's a warning. It says your, windshield wiper fluid is low. That's how I'm looking at it, as, okay, this chemical in my mind right now must be low, which is why I've woken up feeling depressed, right? If there's no other external reason why I should be feeling depressed, which is what happens, it's not external. There's nothing going on at that moment for me to be depressed about. Nobody has passed away. I haven't lost anything. I just woke up feeling pain. Okay, well then the logical answer to this is that there is a depletion of a chemical in my brain. And so I microdose mushroom. Now, one of my friends has told me to, instead of waiting for that crash to happen, I could microdose every day and do 5 days on, 2 days off, 5 days on, 2 days off. So I'm thinking about that. Once again, this is not medical advice. This has worked for me. Music. It's hard to listen to my favorite classical, composition and be down, because once again, music alters those chemicals in the brain. Right? So it's the 3 M's. Meditation. What the meditation does is it allows me to separate. It cues me in to say, hey, listen, there is the I am, and then there's the I think. Right? And when you meditate, you watch the I am. You are the I am watching the I think, bringing the I think under the control of the I am. It's going to take time. And it's not even about control. I used the wrong word. It's about observation of the I think. Knowing that, look, one, it's not just you. You are not an individual. You are comprised of various parts, which I guess would make you an individual. But you have to become aware of that. You listen to, I have this one friend, she's like, she goes, I have ADD. And then she goes, when I have a problem focusing. I want to do this, but I can't seem to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And my thought is I'm watching her observe, and it's like on some level she recognizes this is a problem because these are the desires that she has expressed to me that she has. But for some reason, she is unable to, it's a chemical issue. Now, my response to her is, if you don't want to go on medication, then try meditation. And she says, well, meditation is hard for me. Meditation is hard for everybody. Like, the fuck? It's not easy. Getting up in the morning, sitting for 15 to 30 minutes and watching your own thoughts and bringing it back. We have this. Some people have it harder than other people. There are people where this is a serious chemical issue. Guess what? That's my issue as well. I just won a lottery with this body here, right? But I made myself conscious of what this body is predisposed to, what it is, how it operates. So now, rather than operating on autopilot, I can go, okay, this body, which is not me, it's a form that I am inhabiting right now, is predisposed to certain types of behavior. Okay, now that I've made myself aware of all of these things, I'm aware that the self, the persona of your body, the persona of yourself is to get you to be average. Make yourself aware of that. If you don't want to be average, at least knowing that what is keeping you average is nobody out there. It's just yourself. Okay, great. 2, knowing that, okay, there is an I that says this is what I want to do, and then there's the self-sabotage aspect of the body, which is its drive is to keep me unconscious so that it can stay in control. There's a struggle here. I'm making you aware of a struggle. If you aren't aware that there's a struggle here, if you aren't aware that your own self is your enemy, and not in a way where, like, like in historical times, religion, they would like whip themselves because they recognize on some level that the self was the enemy. I'm not saying take it to that extreme, but historically there was an awareness that the body has its own psychology, its own psyche, that it does need to be disciplined otherwise, or controlled. Once again, I'll say it, if you continue to operate on autopilot, the path that you are on is a path of mediocrity an average. And if you're okay with that, then carry on. You probably wouldn't have listened this far. You probably wouldn't even be listening to this podcast if that was you. But if you are seeking to be more than average, you have to first understand and see that the self is not your friend. The self is a machine. It's a fine-tuned machine. It is part of the collective, and its job is to keep you pushing, following the line, right? Meeting the objectives of the collective, of the whole. You can be the drone, that's okay. But if you have a desire, if you are conscious enough to go, I don't want this. My desire is for something different. This is where it starts. It starts by recognizing, okay, if I exist within the self, I am part of the collective, and the body, the self, the mind, that is the voice of the hive. And everything it says to me is being said to everyone. That voice in your head that criticizes you, you think it's just you that does that too? You're part of the collective. The body is part of the hive. You don't like the hive analogy? Think about it. What other creatures on these planets have a hierarchy system the way humans do? Only insects. Humans have more in common as far as like social construct is concerned with insects than they do with any other mammals, any other creatures on this planet. I mean, to the point where it's like, pay attention, just watch. Like, look around, see how things are. I like the Borg analogy, and I like the insect analogy, and I like the fact that using things like hive, because that I'm trying to make you guys conscious. I'm going to go back to what I started in the beginning where I said the battle is always against yourself. There's nobody out there that can stop you. My friend asked me today, don't you get tired of overthinking? I'm like, all the fucking time. And in fact, when I'm talking to myself, remember I said you are the I am, and then the self is who you are battling with on a daily basis. Understand that you are not an individual. You are the I am versus the self. And I am versus the self. The cell. Think of the cell as like a prison, like I said. And I said, of course. But more accurately, what I need to say is, or my answer should have been, I'm not even thinking. The body is thinking. The body, when you think and you listen to those thoughts, that is the voice of your body, and it's talking. And what it's saying is what it's just echoing society's program to you. And then you are listening. You are listening to yourself. Yourself. So when she says, don't you get tired of overthinking? My response is, should have been, I'm tired of giving myself a command and then not having myself follow that command. It's not, I always say this, I get tired of not listening to myself, but it should be flip. I'm tired of myself not listening to me. When you sit to meditate, you don't want to think, but yet those thoughts come. And that's why meditation is hard, because people think, oh, you're supposed to just stop thinking. No, because You're not, that's the end goal. With years of meditation, you will get to that point where, well, years for some may not be years for others, but you get to the point where it's just silence. But before you get to that point, the most important part is to observe that there is a battle. Observe the battle. That's what meditation is, really. Observe the battle. And once you observe the battle, it no longer becomes a battle, because now you're just seeing what's going on. You see, before, when it was yourself, right? You thought it was your friend, it was like silently sabotaging you. It was a battle, right? Because you kept failing, and every time you failed, yourself was standing there looking at you. It's the only one here with you. And you go like, why do I keep failing? And the self's like, I don't even know. Maybe it's other people, right? So all this time, this self has been sabotaging you. You didn't even realize that you were in a battle. And what meditation does is show you, no, there's shit's going down. Like, look what's happening. And then when you see it, then you go, oh shit, this bitch. Wow. And then at that point that you can then see it, then you go, okay, I'm going to stop listening to you, because literally everything you say is stupid. It's negative. It's fear. It's anxiety. It's just, it doesn't help me in any way, shape, or form. And every time I listen to you, I either make myself upset, or things don't even go the way I want them to, or I'm like afraid, or I'm crying, or I'm mad, or I hurt myself in a way. You get into the habit of doing that enough time, and that's how you begin to conquer the self. And once you can conquer the self, the world is yours. Because one thing you need to understand is everybody's in a battle with themselves. Everything that I've said for the last 56 minutes, everybody else, for the most part, is grappling with, fighting with, because we are all a collective consciousness who have been uploaded, our consciousness have been uploaded into this Borg body, right? This human organic body, right? In society. And so everybody's grappling with this. You're not alone. The people who succeed, right? Jeff Bezos, and, I don't know why I keep coming back to Jeff Bezos, but just for the sake of this conversation, those people learned to see, okay, like they face self-doubt too, right? Oh, I want to start this company. What if I fail? You're not the only person who has to grapple with these. But the people that we elevate and the people who do succeed are the ones who, they don't conquer the world. You have to conquer yourself. To conquer this world, and I don't mean that in like an aggressive way, but to harness the world, to harness your dreams, you have to start first by conquering yourself. Yourself is your only adversary. The reason why this resonates with everybody listening to this is because it's the truth across the board for everybody. When you see people on the streets, a lot of the time, who are they talking to? That internal monologue, the difference between me and a person on the street, the difference between you and a person on the street is that internal battle, they lost. It's now going on externally. That's it. It's a fine line. It's a fine, thin line between sanity and insanity. It really is. And we grapple with this on a daily basis. I'm here. My job here is to make you aware of what's going on behind the scenes, because the moment you become aware, now you see the game. Now you know what's going on. So when you sit down and you go, I want to do this, and then the voice, yourself, your mind, your thoughts go, well, let's do this later. You can go, that's not me. I've expressed a desire and I'm going to do this. It's going to be difficult at first. but you can do it.